Hello YouTubers, this is the third video in our journey to decentralize social media platforms by building an open source free application that allows people to have their own communities and communicate through their own communities without having to be productized by some mogul or a major tech company that tries to control the world and tries to extract prediction models out of their behaviors and use them as products in the market. With each and every one of these videos, I try to start with something as simple as reminding people why we're doing what we're doing and what's the purpose of it and what's the implications that actually result from actually performing such a job. Just a quick reminder for people who watch these videos and want to be a part of this project, and you probably already know this, and I talk about this in some podcasts and articles and everywhere I get to interact with people. Your day-to-day job is great. A lot of engineers have scored a great job, had a nice family, and they bought the house and they did all the right stuff, all the items on the checklist. They have it in there. Um, but unfortunately, it's really bad to actually limit yourself to just these things. Specifically for you as a software engineer, because as a software engineer, you have limitless capabilities. Your code and your software can go anywhere in the world and can impact the lives of hundreds of millions of people around the planet, and yet you don't code until you just get to work and only write code only when there is a monetary return, for what you're doing. And that's just really limited, limited in power, limited in capabilities. I highly encourage you to always think about a higher purpose and a higher goal. Look out there and think about the possibilities. How can you make people's lives better? Don't just be a person that, only cares about, doing a job and then, going back home and sitting in front of Netflix for 7 hours, doing absolutely nothing. I highly encourage you to employ this skill set and the capability that you may learn through these videos and all the other content that I put out there to go out there and change the world. Think about something that's great, something useful. There's a lot of dark forces in the world that makes our world really miserable. And it's time for us as engineers, to take a stand and do something that we believe in to be useful for the rest of the world. And Taharafu is just one of these projects that, I put out there for people to actually take a look, and give them an aim and a purpose and a goal to look at it and either be inspired by it so they go do their own thing, or just think of it as a goal in and of itself, something that they can play with after coming back from work or over the weekends, where they can actually participate in something that's bigger than them and bigger than, the limited space where they live in. I am very proud and very honored, by people from all over the world that, messaged me, reached out, asked about, when they can contribute to this project. And we're very close to starting the contribution to this project. But before we do that, let's just first start with the regular section. Thanks to the current establishment of social media platforms that are out there, they never have shortage of stories and atrocities that violate human rights and privacies, and this is part of it. Let's just go into the news here. Between the last video that I made about Taarafo, and until this video, there's a lot of things have happened that is really sad. Let's take a look. So, one of the saddest things in the world, Facebook smoking and alcohol ads target Australian children. So this is what we were talking about from a prediction model standpoint. What they do is that they look at you as a person who's using the system, and they say you are a target. It doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your privacy, it doesn't matter your personality. That the ads that may be targeting you and profiling that's happening on you could be something that makes you more depressed. It could attack you at your weakest point psychologically. Some things might, trigger some bad memories for some people, cause them depression, cause them to go into this spiral of psychological warfare, where they're thinking about things from the past, or they have anxiety about things that will happen in the future. These ads and these algorithms don't really care about that. They're not humane. You understand that? It doesn't care if you're a child, doesn't care if you're an adult, it doesn't care, what your background is. We will target you with ads, and we will sometimes target you with bad ads. So we see if you say, no, I don't want to see that ad, or if you scroll fast, past that ad, you don't actually have to interact with it. All you have to do is just how much time you are spending in front of this ad, to determine and create a prediction model about, whether you like that ad or not. Let's give you another ad. Let's give you another ad, and let's see how you interact with it, whether you scroll past it or you stay on it. Let's switch the topics. It's really, really evil and really, really smart, in a way that is beyond people's control. And this is an example of it. Nobody specifically put in a particular ad campaign to target children. This is all running, computerized. This is all automated. This is all trying to target, potential customers, regardless of whether these customers are, good customers, bad customers, the right people, the wrong people. It doesn't matter, right? Alcohol, smoking, let's just kill all these children. That's what this ad is basically. Let's give them alcohol and smoking. Let's give them lung cancer and, have them die. It doesn't matter because someone paid the right price for these children. So this is one part. And then here's another one that's really sad. Update, Facebook says it mistakenly blocked one of many Crossroads church ads. So these people just minding their own business. It's a church, they have a column, Facebook blocking. They just had an Easter video, and over an advertisement, and it was blocked due to human error. It's very interesting because um, the video was, on YouTube, the video was never blocked, but Facebook blocked it. And then the representative from Facebook said it was one ad of many successful round that wasn't approved, which we later approved after the church appealed. So the church is putting something out there where they talk about their beliefs and religions and they're celebrating Easter, but it's too late because Facebook decided, oh, you're not going to celebrate Easter this year. We're going to block your content for no reason. What's more interesting about this is that the representative from Facebook said this wasn't an algorithm, this was a human mistake, and all that kind of stuff. That one was sad and funny at the same time. Recently in the news, you will notice that Apple tried to take a little bit of a stand. Tim Cook tries to talk a lot about, human, people privacy and, how safe they are on the internet. Apple for the longest haul has been trying to take a stand and trying to improve their internal systems to do the best they can as a corporate to respect privacy of its users. Their, encryption and all that kind of stuff. It's just an attempt. I don't know if it's a publicity stunt or not, but it's very, very interesting when it takes all the way to the court and Facebook throws a hissy fit, about Apple, trying to limit the data collection, right? So, Facebook is living based on the data that is streaming through your device. The more you scroll on ads and look at things, they're spying on you. They're recording what you're doing. They're catching your metadata and they're seeing what you're doing with these ads. And in here, it's basically, Facebook, Apple said, we're gonna give people the opportunity. We're just gonna give them the option to say no, don't track me. And Facebook flipped out about this. There's a huge lawsuit running in court. This is as of April 29th. This video is on the 30th. There's just a day ago. There's a huge war that's going on there, an army of lawyers where people are going back and forth, and talking about, the possibilities, and you can't block people, and the most majority of our users are Apple users and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting how this one, will pan out. We will sit there and watch and we will observe. Now, the last one in here, it says Facebook says it blocked Resign Modi post by mistake. But it hardly seems like an accident. Like even websites like the Next Web and TechCrunch and all these websites, they're not buying it from Facebook anymore because they heard this, a lot. People trying to express their frustration with the whole, COVID situation that's going on in India. So of course people will be frustrated at their governments and they will have Resign Modi hashtags and immediately suddenly, in India, the hashtag just disappeared, and they said, "Oh, that was just a mistake." I don't know. I'll let you be the judge of, how these systems operate, how much are you going to pay, to silence a public opinion. The whole idea about, building Taarafo is to give people an opportunity to express their opinion freely and not allow them and their data and their prediction models to be sold as a product, right? That's the whole point of it. Taarafo is not meant to be a revenue generating software. It will generate revenue to the people who run it, but it will definitely not run any revenue for the people who design it and develop it unless they run it themselves. What that basically means is that we're not just really decentralizing the authority on social media. What we're basically doing is that we're trying to decentralizing the funds that go into these corporates, to with ads and advertisements and people buying data, people paying who will pay enough price and bid higher price, to block a hashtag for people that are expressing their opinion. You look at these things and say, well, it's not my problem, but the reality is that if yesterday it was the people in India with this hashtag, tomorrow it's going to be you, right? And what are you going to do about that? The internet and software in general is limitless. It's in and of itself inherently gives you this feeling of freedom. When you look at code and you look what the code is capable of doing, and you have this open ocean of the World Wide Web where you can actually publish whatever you want, reach out to whoever you want, publish your ideas and creativity, and express your opinion, and be able to be out there, free as a free person, as how we were born, free, able to express, our opinions freely and express our frustrations. And then some corporate, comes in and tries to productize that and tries to put a price tag on that, and then, all the what follows, the atrocities that follows day after day, just like the stuff, targeting children with ads, with that, a bunch of people worshiping in a church. Nope, you can't watch your video anymore. People in a town, oh, we don't like your town name. We're gonna block you. It's just the system is falling apart. The whole idea of the monolithic social media platform. I'm not talking about the architecture here. I'm talking about, the idea of a monolithic authority that actually runs social media platform. It's just not realistic. It's not how the world works. And the success of any software actually depends on how much it simulates reality. So the further software goes away from reality, the more likely it is to fail. The closer it is to reality, the closer it is. Everyone has a household, everyone has a community. Every community, they have their own administrators that, govern the activities within that community. That's how the world works. There's no one big authority that tells people all over the world outside of the box, outside of the computer. There's no authority out there in the world that tells people what they can and can't say and what they can and can't do. And it surely, sure as heck, they don't really target people with ads and stuff like that. It's just unrealistic, and it doesn't really reflect how the world works. A decentralized social media platform that allows people to have their own communities and connect to other communities is more realistic than any of that. Okay. So with that being said, let's get to work. Let's talk about, this video is mainly about showing you how to initiate, what are the tools, how do you go out there and build the right tools for adding a unit test project into your software, a unit test project into your software. There's three kinds of tests, and we're going to talk about two of them in this video and the next one. There's the unit test, where you actually write, very specific business logic tests. And then there's acceptance test, which is an end-to-end kind of test. And then there is integration test or system test, where you can see the whole picture. I highly recommend, before I forget, let's go back in here. I highly recommend you take a look, and I'm going to put a link in the link section. There's a nice article by Uncle Bob about the types of tests, where he points out a lot of these different types of testing. There's system tests, there's so many different tests. Let me see if I can actually here you go. Yeah, there's so many different, tests. He talks about it, extensively in his blog. I really highly, recommend you go to his blog and take a look at all the different kinds of tests that he talks about, it's quite astounding that how many tests are out there, given that he's carrying the whole there it is, first class test. So there you go. So there's unit tests, there's acceptance tests, there's integration tests, there's system tests, there's micro tests, there's functional tests. There's so many different types of tests that actually control, the report of healthiness, and it ensures the confidence in your system. This article is gold. Go ahead and take a look and see if it makes sense to you. Now, we are mainly focusing on unit test and acceptance. Let's go ahead in here. Let me just explain to you the picture, the big picture in here for what we're really trying to accomplish. When we build our systems, you probably know this by now. If you're following the guidance and the engineering standard that I'm putting together, you will notice something very interesting in here. When you are writing a small microservice, just a teeny tiny microservice in here, and this microservice is really limited, it's just a simple broker that talks to the database and a service that handles all the business logic and validation, incoming and outgoing. And then on top of that, there's a little controller. Let's say this is your microservice. I'm going to show you how it expands without losing its pattern, which is how nature is. If you look at an atom, right, or an atom, you see the electrons, the electrons going, and then there's the neutrons in the middle. And then if you look at the galaxy, you'll see the sun, and then all of these planets going around it. The pattern is literally everywhere, right? The same thing happens with software. Let me show you what that looks like. So let's say these are your broker, and these are your services, and these are your controllers or exposers. It doesn't really matter. Like, I normally say exposers because you could expose it now. It doesn't have to be an API controller. You could expose things through, whatever you want to expose. It could be a UI component, it could be a Razor page, it could be, a JavaScript library that's built on top of that can call your services. It could be literally anything, So controllers is it's more like exposers, but controllers is what fits the date and time where we are talking about this. This is your microservice. I'm going to call this here, this is the domain of this, and it's called a microservice, like this. Okay, so this is a microservice, and in a microservice, there is few things that we do when we're doing test. Just assume that in your unit test in here, what you're basically mainly doing is that you're going and mocking this guy. You mock this guy completely, and you're mainly targeting this guy. So the things that are in the brighter color, like this guy, not this guy, this guy here, this is the main focus. So this is unit test. It's mainly focusing on just the service, and it's mocking all the other dependencies. It doesn't really care about any of these other dependencies. All right. That's unit test. Let's take a look at the acceptance test. And some people argue the concept of acceptance test. They say, no, what you're doing is integration test. Sure, we call it whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. What really matters to me is that you are able to get the point and get the idea about what I'm trying to accomplish here. Okay, so here's one. This is the second one. The second one is what I call acceptance test. And what this guy is doing, actually, instead of it targeting the service, it's actually targeting the entire microservice. So everyone in this acceptance test is a target. Look how the arrow is navigating this way. See, so we're starting from here, and we're actually targeting all of this, versus this guy that's actually targeting the service. What's the difference between these two? Because your services is where your business logic is, the sequence, the iteration, and the selection. All your if statements and while loops and for loops and all of these different statements are living in your service. Unit tests mainly focuses on all the different permutations of scenarios, from an input, from an exception, from ensuring particular dependencies has been called. All of these different things are the concern of a unit test, while this acceptance test is saying, I just want to poke a hole through the system. I just want to know if I can add a student. I don't care, to verify that the student is, the student is basically a the the ID of the student is invalid or the name of the student is null. Nope, I'm gonna build a happy path, and I want to make sure, because the acceptance test is testing that these components are integrated with each other properly. Do you understand? So what that basically means is that I don't really care. I already tested all the different permutations in here, and if we really keep the controllers and the brokers as thin as possible, then the only concern I want to have is to know that these controllers to the services to the brokers are connected properly. Okay, so that's the important part. Are they connected properly? This is all I care about. Now, if you navigate a little bit further, if we go all the way to the integration level test right here, and we're going to get to that when we're trying to test a portal communicating with an API, I will definitely show you what that looks like. I can't actually wait to show you all these kind of things. In an integration test, what the system really tries to do is that it only tries to verify that one microservice is properly connected to another microservice. So I want to know that these two microservices are connected to each other properly, which basically means that we zoom out a little bit outside of that realm of a microservice, like this. And this becomes the system, your entire system, like this. And this system basically this is your integration test. And this system basically validates that microservice 1 is connected to microservice 2 is connected to microservice N. See how we're zooming out? So we started up here with the service. If you actually think about it, it's actually more like validation, processing, integration. That's what's inside one microservice. Right, actually that's what's inside one service, which is not a microservice, it's the little class that we call student service. Look how I'm zooming out in here. So I'm zooming out from a service. Inside the service itself, I'm testing the function that it's doing the right validation, it's doing the right business logic, and it's doing the integration, calling the brokers, calling the logging. And then you zoom out a little bit. You just zoom out a little bit into the microservice level. So this guy, this one little block in here, that's the service, that's 3 pieces in and of itself. It has validation, processing, and integration. Right? And as you have tested that, you zoom out a little bit and you see if that service is actually connected to the right components. And after that, you zoom out a little bit to the system level and you do exactly the same thing. You go back here and you say, I want to start from here and I want to validate that I'm doing the right thing. Which basically means that even in this scenario here, since we really changed this into processing and integration, what really happens is that your unit test will still start from the validation layer. It has to go through the system and it's going to test that system for you. See how we're zooming out slowly but surely outside of the system. So this little service here is basically all 3 of these. And this entire block in here is representative of each and every block of these. That's how you're probably, this is the idea around testing. You're testing it slowly but surely. But the difference here, while this guy, basically is this guy in here will be basically practicing or testing every single endpoint that you're trying to communicate with. This guy will just say, give me any action on any system that ensures that this system is connected to another system. That's all it cares about. It doesn't really care if the answer is right or wrong, whether you're returning a 400 or whatever the case may be. It just wants to know that this connection is in place. See how the roles and responsibilities change here between one realm and another. You go from unit testing to acceptance testing to integration testing. You're zooming out and you're looking at the big picture as a whole when you're doing your tests. So today we're going to do each and every one of those. Today I'm mainly focusing on this part in here. Just the setup part, we're going to go through it over and over again. Just the setup part. I have an ASP.NET API, and I want to initiate a test project, unit test project that handles all the, the scenarios that we want to do. How do I initiate that? That's really the topic of this video. So let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio in here. This is Taarafo. Here we go. And let's go ahead and start a new project. Let me increase the font here real quick. I try as much as I can to remember that one. Here we go, 150%. I hope that's good enough. Here we go. And let's go ahead and create a new test project. Now bear with me here, the naming convention, every single little step that I'm doing in here is conscious step. I'm doing it consciously. I'm doing it there's a theory behind each and every one of it. See how we fixed literally every single aspect of those. We made sure that, our coding is in the right place. I want you to focus on the idea of why we're doing what we're doing, not just what we're doing. Because if you understand the why, you will know when to break these rules and when to break that convention and actually evolve. If you look at what I do and you say, well, I'm doing brokers because Hassan told me to do brokers, without understanding why we're doing what we're doing, you will never learn. You will never evolve, right? You'll just be a drone. You'll be a cog in a machine that just repeats what everyone else is telling him. Even in my engineering standard, I say my standard is not perfect and it's not meant to be perfect and it will never be perfect because technology changes we evolve, we grow, inspiration, revelations, whatever is happening in your head and in your heart is something that is unique to you and you alone, so you can inspire the rest of the world. I'm just helping you have access to that kind of power that you already have. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new project in here. And I'm going to go ahead with X unit. So let's go ahead with X unit in here. Here we go. X unit test project. So it's C# Linux Mac OS Windows test. That means it's core. And I'm going to click next. And look at the naming convention here. The naming convention here is really, really important. So I called my main API project Taarafo.core. So I'm going to call this one Taarafo.core.tests.unit. Because there will be Taarafo.core.test.acceptance. Taarafo.core.test.integration. So you're basically going plural singular here. You're basically going and saying people, and then there is, Ali out of people, right? People, men, Ali. So you see how you're going into a sequence of specification as you go further. It's the same thing with these naming conventions. Now, what are the things that I really care about in a unit test project? I want to go ahead in here and pull very specific libraries. And each and every one of these libraries we're going to talk about in detail, when the time comes. Here's what I need to have first. Let's first upgrade all the existing libraries in the system. Here's an update. Here we go. All right. Now, let's go ahead and start adding a few things. So first and foremost, I need something to help me mock a behavior. Remember how when we went in here and we said, I want to test validation, processing, integration. I don't want my system to go and actually call a real database. I want to be able to mock that behavior so my service thinks that I'm actually talking to a database or talking to an API, but in reality it's actually a mocked behavior. I'm containerizing it. So outside of that realm, remember how I say, there's controllers, services, brokers. Outside of that realm, there is out here, somewhere in here, there's this thing that's called brokers. And then there is this thing from the other side that's called controllers. But we don't care about those. We mock them out in here. If you want to see the big picture like that. But we mock those out. We completely mock them out. So we don't have to deal with them at all. So this is mocked and this is completely ignored. And we're just convincing, instead of actually having the service calling a real database, we don't want it to create database records. We don't want it to do that. We just want to test all the different permutations. So we need to mock this guy. So we replace this with mock of a broker. That's really all that we're doing. And you will see the exact same language that we use, when we are doing mocks we're we're basically blocking that behavior and controlling that behavior to see how our service will behave. Think about yourself as a scientist, and you're doing some experimentation, right? You're trying different conditions to see if the subject of your test will behave differently based on the different conditions. Like for instance, if you're, testing the conditions of a particular plant, let's say a flower, you're testing how the flower operates. You're trying to put the light from one side and then the light from the other side. You're basically convincing that flower that it's sunny, even though it could be in the middle of the night, right? But you're telling that flower, oh, it's sunny today. Show me what you're gonna do, right? And to understand the behavior and study the behavior, it's something very, very, very similar to that. All scientific based, all scientific activity that tries to focus on that stuff. Okay, so let's go back into our project here. So I need mock, right? So here's mock. Mock by Mr. Daniel Casalino. Some of the best libraries out there that actually it's just as good as Newtonsoft JSON. Some really smart people that build these things. So this is one part. And then the second library that I really care about is called Object Filler by Dynamics. What's the point of object filler? Object filler, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like. Object filler helps you when you are passing a student object. You shouldn't be typing in the data, the values of that student object. You should randomize the work that you're doing. You should really focus on the randomization of the work that you're doing. So if there are any scenarios or any cases that you're not aware of, this randomization will expose that security gap and that security hole in your system. And like I said in previous videos, there are two schools of thought. Some people say never ever use randomization. Pass in expected input so you have expected output. Sure, but I am for the school of thought that says randomize as much as you can, because you're actually testing behaviors, not particular scenarios. Testing behaviors is more generic than a scenario. A behavior is many, many, many different scenarios, that you're exposing a particular test object to it and seeing how it would behave in these different different conditions, rather than testing a specific scenario. And we're going to talk about that also a little bit. The last thing, which is one of my favorite libraries, is something called Fluent Assertions. There's one more library that I forgot, but I'm going to add it soon. Fluent Assertions. And Fluent Assertions basically is a library that makes it a lot easier to verify that one particular value is equivalent to the other. So ideally, in the ye old days, people used to go and say assert, are equal or equal, and they pass in, some value in here and then another value in here, and they say, this is our assertion. But it's not fluent, it's not pretty. It's not pretty code. It's kind of hard to read, right? Instead, people now would go and say, let's say this is Hassan as a value should, like this, should be equivalent to, right, and visual, for instance. Right? What that basically means is that it allows you to fluently, every time you hear Fluent API, be really happy. That means someone who really cares about your engineering experience is putting in the time and effort to make sure that your code and your software is basically easy to read and easy to work with. That's really, really important. Okay, so this is Fluent Assertions. The last one I want to use is something called compare logic. Compare logic. Compare logic basically because I think it's logic compare. Maybe I was mistaken. Compare something. Yeah, there it is. Compare net objects, right? This library is amazing. It basically, when you're working with .NET objects, you can't just copy them. It's a little bit harder to copy a .NET object. You want to allow yourself to be able to clone an object, which is another library I'm going to have, but then again, you want to compare these objects, while controlling, not caring about validating particular fields when it comes to the reference and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that in a bit. There's also clone, the last one I like to use, and that's really, really advanced. Like, we're not going to use these in a while, but I think it's called Deep Clone or something like that. Deep Cloner, there it is. An amazing library that gives you the ability in .NET to copy an object, and losing the reference. So when you're comparing two objects, you're actually comparing two objects, and we're going to talk about that also in a bit. Now that I got these libraries, let me just give you a reminder. If you go to Edit Projects, here's the stuff that I need: Compare Net Objects, Deep Cloner, Fluent Assertions, Mock, and Dynamics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 libraries, really, really important. You're going to use them a lot. It makes your code and your life a lot easier when you're working with these things. Let's slap a copyright in here. Right, and let's do Control KE. And this first one, it says should be true. When I say this, is basically a dummy test that I'm putting in here. So when you're deploying to pipelines, your pipeline, when it runs, it will tell you that I actually can see your test project, and I actually can verify that your tests are running. So that's just initiation. That's just you saying, I want to know that all my projects, all my templates are set up properly, so I can run accordingly with that stuff. So this should be true, and in here I should just say assert, or just do this: true should be true. Right? So this is just a simple thing that I'm running in here, and the name of this class is something like delete me. Delete me basically meaning this is only here until you actually have business logic that you need to test. That's all that it is. It's just staying here until you have a proper business logic that you need to test. Right? So now if I go into here, this is my favorite way of running this, but you can also run it from the UI. The bigger your project gets, the more useful you'll see that command line becoming. So .NET test. There you go. We have an error. Fluent assertions could not be found. Let's see if we can rebuild the solution. Oh, why did it lose fluent assertions? Let's see what's going on. Okay, this is a success. That's weird. And then let's go back here and do .NET test. There you go. So passed. One test is passing. That's basically just as simple as I can get it to be. And I know, like in some other videos, I would dump in like 5 or 6 different concepts at one time. Nope, at this time, I'm basically showing you everything. You can see here I updated the, every time I draw a picture, it's gonna save it in source control, so you can go and open it up with this cool tool called Draw.io. But that basically is the initiation. You're just initializing, unit test for an ASP.NET Core application. So let's just go ahead in here. So what's our commit is gonna look like? We're basically going in here and saying this is infrastructure because you're adding in a new project, infra, and then initialize unit test project. There you go. And push. I think I have latest, I think. I guess not. Pull and push. There you go. And in my Solution Explorer here, I basically have all the data in, and this is all my solution. Everything is in place. That's it. That's how we initialize a unit test project. In the next video, which shall be very, very soon to be released, because I'm trying to expedite the process on this project, as important as you may realize it is. In the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about, how to initialize acceptance tests. Someone reached out to me the other day and said, there's a better way where you can initialize, your acceptance test by bypassing, the interceptors, which I really, really appreciate. A lot of people reach out to me with some amazing ideas. I'm gonna give this a shot, try it out, and maybe shift my engineering standard to actually follow that particular process if it seems to be more useful. So that's pretty much it. I will give you some links for all the news and all the little details that we mentioned in this video. But more importantly, I want you to learn from this. Even if you're not really fully invested in, the purpose of this project as a decentralized social media platform, I want you to learn from this and hopefully use it in your day-to-day job. So maybe create an opportunity for yourself and create a better career for yourself. And hopefully you will seek a higher purpose and a higher goal that maybe once more change the world to the best. That's pretty much it for this session. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to reach out. Drop a comment in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.